This is the part where I normally tell you that I'm Jason with Born Handy. And I am. I am still Jason with Born Handy. But I am also Jason with Saving Sally. So if you're into cars, I would encourage you to check that video out. But for the purposes of this video, and what's important here, I'm also Jason with Comfort Masters of North Alabama. Now, Saving Sally and Born Handy are a couple of things that I do for fun. And sometimes I accidentally mess around and even make a little bit of money doing that. But Comfort Masters is something that I do for money. And sometimes I mess around with Comfort Masters and I even have a little fun. I feel like I'm well positioned to talk about something that I'm seeing as a growing trend in the do-it-yourself and the HVAC world. And that, of course, is the do-it-yourself air conditioner system. We're going to talk about why you might want to take this on as a do-it-yourself project, why you might not, and more importantly, why I don't think that you should. Now, the upside of heat pumps is fairly energy efficient. The downside, of course, has been that they're limits. You know, they can't operate at the lower temperatures, so you had to have this auxiliary heat kit, which uses a boatload of electricity. And that's what's kept these things from colder climates. The reason you need that backup heat kit is because as the temperature falls and efficiency is lost, around 35 or 30 degrees, heat pumps become incapable of keeping up with the demand of the home altogether. And so we have to have some sort of auxiliary heating system in order to keep the house warm. So oftentimes you'll see this actually listed on the thermostat as auxiliary heat or aux heat. That being said, this Gree Flexx system is capable of being a heat pump and operating at full capacity all the way down to negative 22 degrees. For a system like this, you would almost never even need to use the heat kit. With one exception, a lot of people install these without the heat kits, but I actually think that that's a mistake. When you run these things in heat pump mode, the outdoor component is going to sit outside, and every now and then it'll freeze up. And so there are an array of sensors, and there's some logic programmed in that when it freezes, it actually comes on in what we call defrost mode, which is effectively just running as an air conditioner for a few minutes. And the last thing you want to do when it would be, 19 or 20 degrees outside is to turn your air conditioner on. You would suddenly feel a really cold draft, and this heat kit kicks on during that time in order to knock the chill out of that air. Maybe in a shop environment like this, it wouldn't be necessary, but I have still opted to use it. They just don't cost that much to add on, and to me, they're worth the extra work. So now I'm going to talk about a few reasons that you might want to go with a Gree Flexx system like this. There are other brands. There are lots of companies out there that make inverter type systems like these. I've chosen to go with the Gree because my local distributors carry it. They won't sell to you directly as a homeowner, but the good news is that you will have a network of technicians who can get parts. And if they're having some difficulty making the repair, because these systems are fairly complicated, most likely your local East Coast Metals has someone on standby that you can get a hold of that offers tech support and has specialized training on these systems. I don't want to throw any manufacturers under the bus here, but I'm just going to tell you right now, there are other manufacturers out there with some pretty big names that I defy you to go buy their parts. Even before the whole COVID economy became a thing, I can't tell you how many times I heard, yes, it's under warranty, but we're sorry we don't have the part, so good luck. Now, to me, that is reason alone enough to take a pass on certain systems. I'm just going to tell you that this system here has a good parts availability, and it has good support after the sale. Reason number 2 is the electrical usage. Your typical heat pump is going to pull somewhere around 10, 13 amps at the condenser, 2 to 3 amps at the air handler. Newer systems are going to pull a little bit less. This one's going to pull even less than that. Now, when we get it installed, I will put a clamp meter on there and we're going to check. So hopefully I'm not sticking my foot in my mouth. Reason number 3 was the noise level. Now, this is a metal building. It's loud. If anything hits the top or any kind of noise outside, it transmits through the building much better than it would, say, if you were in a stick-built home. Now it does have the foam insulation, and that cut way down on that noise transmission, but it is still a factor. And so given that I plan to do a lot of videos in this building, I just didn't want to have to contend with a noisy condenser kicking off and on just behind that wall. Now those first three considerations kind of apply whether you're hiring a contractor or attempting to do this yourself. But these next ones are going to be specifically for the do-it-yourselfer. Number one is no brazing. Brazing is not something that you just watch a YouTube video and can do. I'm certain that there are people out there who do it that way, but I think the majority of folks out there will end up causing more harm than good on their first attempt. Another one for the do-it-yourselfer, and this is true of most systems. In fact, I don't know of any systems that don't come this way, but they come pre-charged with the refrigerant. Now they're supposed to come pre-charged with all the refrigerant you are going to need. I have seen some new systems be a little low. I've not heard of that being an issue with these Gree Flexx systems. Not only is the condenser pre-charged, but there's actually a little bit of charge in the air handler as well. So that kind of leads me to another kind of upside for the do-it-yourselfer. It should be a lot easier to pull a vacuum because you're only pulling a vacuum on the line set itself and not on the entire line set plus the indoor coil. And the last reason that you might want to do this yourself is, of course, the money savings. There's just no way that you decided to do this on your own just because you thought it would be a lot of fun. You absolutely are thinking about a do-it-yourself job because you wanted to save the money. But I will tell you, you're not going to save as much money as you think you're going to save. So this is kind of a preview into the reasons why I don't think you should do this job yourself. Lowest cost that I was able to find this system online as of the day that I was filming this video was $3,700. And you may be thinking, wow, that's a significant savings over whatever estimates you got from whatever contractor is in your area. But that's extremely misleading. For example, add this to your cart. The very first thing it says is, well, do you need a line set? Do you need a pad? Do you need a heat kit? Do you want it to have a breaker included? Do you need a thermostat? Because I'm going to tell you, if you go to your big box store and just buy a thermostat, there's a good chance that it won't work with this system. Do you need a 1 heat, 1 cool? Do you need a 2 heat, 1 cool? If this is not something that you do for a living every day, you probably won't know the answer. Once I went through and added everything to the cart that I would normally need, it wouldn't allow me to calculate shipping without first attempting to go through some sort of checkout. But I've shipped things like this before, common carrier, and just as a guess right now, you're probably looking at close to $300 just for shipping. There were some other things that I had to add in that I didn't really discuss here, but by the time I sat down and added everything up, including tax, this $3,700 system had reached $6,450, give or take a little. That's before you've set aside any time to actually do the labor. That's before you've set aside the time to do something that I haven't talked about yet, but that is an absolute must, which is to get your EPA certification. To work on a system like this, you need a Type 2 EPA 608 certification. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't need that, it's just this one time. If you were to get caught, the fine is $47,500. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look it up. But I'm pretty sure that's what it is as of the time of this video. It is not uncommon for city inspectors and county inspectors who, they have an area, they're driving out to a spot that they service, and they pass by your home. Trust me, the guy who does the HVAC inspections in your area looks at air conditioning systems when he drives by. And they're able to pick out, that's an old one, that's an old one. Ooh, that one looks new. And that's funny, I'm the only guy who inspects over here, and I don't remember this address ever coming up. It's also not uncommon for the HVAC businesses in your area to be a little territorial. I've seen scenarios and heard about scenarios where, two competing businesses were trying to get a contract. The next thing they know, they see a new system at the other person's house. They place a little call to the county and say, hey, just wondered who pulled the permit over there. There's a brand new system, just a little bug in your ear. You might want to go check that out. Don't risk it. The cost to you if you get caught performing this type of work without an EPA license far exceeds the savings that you would have gotten from doing the job yourself. Okay, so the permits and the licensing. Now, depending on where you live, you actually may be able to get around those. The permit itself, at least where I live, if you're a homeowner doing this job for yourself and no one else, and there is no one paying you any money, you can pull the permit and you are allowed to do your work. But you have to do the work. You can't buy the stuff, pull the permit, and then hire someone else. That is not allowed. You also have to have it inspected as though you were a contractor. Now, they're going to hold you to the same standard. There's a lot of things you're probably not going to know. So when your inspector walks out there and says, oh, but you didn't do, A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, and he fails that inspection, you're going to have the inspection done again at a later date after you've made the changes. The same rules would apply to doing your own electrical if, depending on where you live. You may be able to go ahead and pull your own permits and do your own work. But you have to ask yourself, do you know what gauge wire the condenser gets? Do you know what gauge wire the air handler gets? Do you run it off of one large wire, or can you run it off of two somewhat smaller wires? What size breaker? Now, a lot of those things are going to be told to you in the manuals, but a lot of those things aren't. And if you don't have that specialized experience, there's a good possibility that you could do a lot of work, spend a lot of money, only to have an inspector make you redo it. Another reason that you might want to take a pass is the Manual J. Now, the Manual J is just a series of calculations that we use to determine the heat loss and the heat gain of a structure so that we can appropriately size an air conditioning system for that building. The Manual J is not something you're going to sit down and learn in 30 minutes. It is an extremely complex set of calculations. The book itself's, got a pretty good bit of thickness to it. There's not a lot of instructions in the book. So even if you bought the book is not really going to walk you through how to actually do the Manual J. The Manual D. So the Manual D tells you how to size your ductwork and how to build appropriately sized ductwork, not just that connects to the unit, but all the way down the trunk line and to every run out that comes off subsequently. The Manual D is, although not as complex and frustrating as the Manual J, is still not an easy task. Not all inspectors are going to whip out a Manual J and check you on it. But some will. And the ones that will, they can eat you up. They can just eat you alive. And they're probably not going to be very helpful when it comes to helping you solve the problem. You're going to have a boatload of specialty tools. For example, we'll just start with the line sets. So these things, you don't just screw them on to your system and say, okay, done. There is a torque specification. And if you over torque it, I can guarantee you your system is going to leak. If you torque it perfectly, your system will probably not leak, but it still might. A torque wrench by itself, a couple $100. You're going to need a tubing cutter. You don't want a whole bunch of excess line set. You're going to want to cut that off to fit, and when you terminate it, you're going to have to re-flare it. So you're going to need a flaring tool. Then you're going to use your torque wrench again to make sure that it's correct. Once your line set is connected, you're going to need a vacuum pump. Since we're talking about pulling a vacuum, you're going to need a micron gauge. Look, the list goes on and on. There are a lot of specialty tools that the average consumer just will not have. And by the time you buy all of those tools, you're approaching what it would have cost to just simply hire a contractor. This is a lot of work. There's one of the guys that kind of got me into this business. One of the things he likes to say is, well, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And he's right. This is a hard job. This air handler, it's heavy. I don't know what it weighs, but it's a lot. And it's got to go up. Most often it has to go through one of these. It may not fit. I can't tell you how many times we've had to pull down a stairwell, push a system through, and then reattach the stairwell, reattach the trim, and then begin work. It's going to be hot. If you're installing this thing in an attic, it's hot up there. I'm going to tell you right now, 150-degree attic is pure misery. I'll also tell you that someone who knows what they're doing will be in that attic a lot less time than someone who is just figuring it out for the first time. You may be up there 3, 4, 5 times as long as someone with some experience. The risk of injury. So when you're working with sheet metal, man, you cut yourself. You cut yourself a lot in the beginning. The longer you do it, the less frequent cuts become. But they don't ever go away. Cutting yourself is just a fact of life working with sheet metal. That's probably the smallest part of it. I know people that have gotten a piece of metal in their eye, had to miss work. One of the bigger threats that you'll face is falling through the ceiling. Now you may be thinking, hey, look, I'll be careful. I'm here to tell you, when you're hot, been up in an attic a while, it's real easy to make the wrong step and to go right through. Almost every HVAC company that I know, at least once or twice a year, has someone who goes through the ceiling. Another one is the warranty. If you install this yourself and you do not have a license to do HVAC work, now I don't mean the EPA license, I mean a state and county license. It doesn't matter how good of a job you did. If you did everything as perfect as the most perfect HVAC company on the planet, none of that matters. You cannot register this system for the warranty. Now, you still get a 5-year warranty, which is pretty good, but you get a 10-year warranty if you use a licensed HVAC installer. Most of the time when these things fail and break, it is not at year 4. It is at year 8 or 9. These systems are expensive to work on. The motor in here has a little circuitry with some logic in it that communicates with the board. The board and the motor get together to decide what speed to run based off of various calculations and sensors that are in there. You don't just run down to your local Ace Hardware and buy a replacement motor. These motors can easily surpass $1,000. So having that warranty is worth it. And the last reason that I'll mention that you might want to take a pass, although there are many more reasons, is of course the time lost. Now it's real easy to look at these components here and think, well, me and my buddy from work or my neighbor, we can knock this out in a weekend, maybe a day. Probably not. That's possible. It is certainly possible. But it's also possible that this is one of those projects that would turn from a weekend job to a job that you spend the next 3 or 4 weekends trying to get done. So now you're an entire month before you get your air conditioning system installed. Now certainly there are a lot of other things we could talk about. There are a lot of ups and downs depending on which side of it you look at. But my opinion is this is one of those jobs that is best left to the professionals. But who am I to tell you? I'm also the guy that built a 30 by 40 metal building because I thought it looked easy. I have been to people's homes who told me I did it myself. And I got there and the system was, a half ton too small or 2 tons too large. Just a quick anecdote. Maybe a year ago, I had a customer call and he wanted me to just buy from him an air conditioner that he purchased online and installed himself. And by all accounts, he did a fantastic job, except it was a 5 ton and the house called for a 3 ton. Now you may be thinking, hey, 5 tons more better than 3 tons, right? No. You actually want the smallest possible air conditioner that you can reasonably get away with, because air conditioning also removes moisture from the air and humidity. So if you have an air conditioning system that is too large, the humidity will continue to increase in your home because that air conditioner satisfies the thermostat too quickly. And that's exactly what had happened in this home. It was consumed with black mold. So he had to bulldoze the entire house. If he would have hired a professional, that probably wouldn't have happened. And I say probably because sometimes professionals get it wrong too. But at very least, professionals have insurance against such mistakes. So if a professional did it, they are the ones who are on the hook, not you as the homeowner. Something else I'll tell you is if you're thinking well, I'll just buy it and then find my own HVAC professional company to install it. Chances are you won't. Now, you could. They're out there. But most HVAC companies will not install for people that purchase their own equipment. And it's not about, let me punish them because I'm upset that I don't get to make that profit. It's more about, if someone else provided this air conditioning system, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it was handled. I don't know anything about this air conditioning system. I do everything that I do correctly, and it won't turn on. Well, now there's this weird tension between the homeowner and the contractor, because the homeowner feels like, hey, I provided you an air conditioning system and it's not working. And in my mind, I feel like that's because you have missed something. And the air conditioning contractor feels as though, nope, I have checked every box, crossed every T, and dotted every I. You have faulty equipment. Then we end up in this weird finger-pointing game. You also have the problem of who covers the warranty. Well, obviously your contractor's probably, if you can get one to do it, going to tell you that there is no guarantee, no warranty. And now you are probably going to be the one who has to call whoever you bought it from and say, hey, it doesn't work. The other guy said it probably needed this or that. If you want him to call, he's probably going to want to charge you for that time and that diagnosis. So it can be tricky to get someone to install it for you, although not impossible, somewhat tricky. I've covered a lot of ground, talked about a lot of things, and those are just some of the reasons that I would suggest to you that you take a pass on this as a do-it-yourself project. I promise there are more. But if after all that you are a glutton for punishment and you think, you know what, doesn't matter, I am all in and I'm going to knock this out myself, I hope to see you on the next video, because I am planning to show you exactly what's involved when installing a 2-ton Gree Flexx. So until next time, this is Jason with Comfort Masters of North Alabama, and this is Jason with Saving Sally, and this is Jason with Born Handy.